My guest today is Gabriella Rapone. She's a brilliant marketing analyst, strategist, and fixer who's been helping business owners and entrepreneurs get next level results since 2005. She's an email marketing and e-commerce wizard, and her simple, no-nonsense business strategies and solutions will help you consistently engage more users and increase their lifetime value by over 40%. This episode is going to show you how to profit in your business fast and without stress. So let's get to the interview. Hello, and welcome to Hero Up, the podcast that inspires and challenges you to step up and become heroic in all areas of your life. I'm your host, Tony Stark Polici, and it's my goal to give you practical, actionable advice and insights into copywriting, mindset, lifestyle, and impact. On this show, we'll explore how to create compelling and persuasive marketing messages, and I'll give you clever tips to make you stand out as a hero. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a coach, or a creative, this podcast is for you. So, let's dive in. Gabriella, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited about this interview with you. We have not had a chance to talk before, and when you agreed to come on the Hero Up podcast, I was really thrilled. So I just want you to know that I'm excited to get to know you and to find out all about you. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. I really do appreciate you asking me to be here. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So the first question I have for you is really just basic. So what do you do? What do you do for people? And why do you do it?
Why do I do it? Oof, okay. What do I do? I basically help. I help mostly e-commerce stores learn how to profit from the start, right? Without basically having to, without having to stress too much, right? So, and one of those things that we do, and the way that I do it is through email marketing, right? So we know the long debate about email marketing being dead, which we know is absolutely not true. Right. So, I've been doing this for about 20 years now. Over about 20 years, I've been doing this. Started off in the affiliate world, as an email marketer, basically third party. You want to consider it spamming, not so much spamming, but that's what it was considered. And basically learned the hard way of, basically how to navigate everything. And I became basically very, very proficient in learning basically how to hit the inbox and how to stay there. Because one of the biggest problems that people have with email marketing is being able to hit the inbox and really getting people to open and click their emails. And so for the longest time, while I was, in the affiliate world, I basically started transitioning over because after 10 years in the affiliate world, if you're an affiliate, you know how it is, you get beaten up quite a bit, right? And for me, it was kind of like, okay, I wanted to sort of move out of that and really start teaching people because that's the thing that I love to do. I'm sort of a natural teacher. I've always loved to teach people and I love to empower people, right? So that's when I wrote a book called Hitting the Inbox. Actually, it was a course first called Secrets to Inboxing, where I basically taught people how to basically hit the inbox and when your emails were spamming, how to get out of it really quickly and all that sort of stuff, right? So I became really, really good at that. Then I wrote a book on that. And then basically I kind of switched my focus from affiliates to e-commerce, right? Because e-commerce is, it's online, right? Obviously if you're selling a product online, it's e-commerce, right? Even if you're affiliate, it's still e-commerce, right? It's all that, right? So I kind of switched my focus to them. And because again, they were the ones that I felt needed the most help, right? And I'm someone who's really, you need help, right? I want to help you. That's what I want to do. I want to educate you. I want to empower you. And for a while too, I had an agency, right? I had an agency where I do things for people. And for me, it wasn't a good fit for me, only because I felt like the minute I left, the clients would be left with nothing. And that's usually what happened, right? The clients would do really, really, really well with me, right? Because obviously I knew what I was doing. I was able to strategize and do that. And I was really good at being able to monetize things really quickly. But then the minute I would leave, everything would just basically just crash, right? And so I didn't like that aspect, right? So for me, that's when I sort of switched my focus more to teaching, right? Just empowering them. Same way too when I had my consulting too. The way that I would do it is, I would work with my clients and train their teams to be able to do this stuff on their own so they wouldn't be so reliant on me. Right now, obviously if I had an agency, I could probably be having a very successful agency that way, but I didn't like doing that. That just wasn't my deal. I didn't like it. So that's basically it. I just kind of switched over and, now I still do train some clients, not very many, because a lot of the stuff that I do now is just, I basically just have e-courses that people do, right? So it's basically my exact same framework, right? It's the exact same framework that I would do for my 6 and 7 figure clients that I would do. It's the exact same one. I basically teach them exactly how to do. I give them everything step by step, the way that I would hold, a client's hand, and for them to be able to, like I said, profit from the start. So you're not with e-commerce again, a lot of them are very, very heavily reliant on, of course, selling that product and getting those ads. But when you know how to harness the power in email, right? When you really, really learn how to harness that power, it's unbelievable what you can do. And again, I came from that world where, in 2005, there wasn't display ads, right? The internet was still kind of new. There wasn't display and everything was done via email. It was all email. Right. I mean, brands were built, like Gabriella coffee. Like, I'm sure you probably, remember that. I mean, that brand, I don't think ever did any ads online. It was all via email. Yeah. They built a $1 billion brand all on email. So, it's just really understanding that. And I think I was fortunate to sort of come from that world to see what the possibilities were, right? So I didn't have such a narrow sort of view where some of these people are coming in and just sort of listening to a lot of these gurus and so on and so forth, right? I was able to actually see it for myself because, as an account manager and an email service provider, right, I would oversee numerous clients that would, like I said, they would make hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. It was insane, and not just mailing once a day, they were mailing some of them 10 or 20 times a day and still making money. So that's why, like I said, I appreciate that time that I went through because I was able to see it. And I didn't come into this with a lot of assumptions or, listening to gurus and all that sort of stuff. So I really kind of was able to come in from the ground in and really sort of see everything from the bottom up.
That's exciting times. As you're talking, it's taking me back to some of the things that I did. I remember the early days of ClickBank and how exciting that was for people.
Yes.
Just the opportunity where they could promote. And honest to God, I was a terrible affiliate. Like, I tried it a few times, but I just couldn't focus on it. Like,
really?
From my judgment of it is it's really something that you need to commit to, and go all in if you're going to be successful, right? So I would play around. I'd see somebody's offer and I'd think, I'm going to send this out to my list, or I'm going to try and promote this. And I remember this is 2014. I was moving out of my house. It was downsizing from the house that I raised my kids in. And I had this office computer and, I, plugged in, turned it on to look at it and see what was on it. And on the desktop, there were like 4 graphics that I built for this tattoo product I was going to promote as an affiliate. Like, I don't know, maybe 2005. Mm-hmm. 9 years had been sitting there on my desktop doing nothing. So it's just, but yeah, you were right there. Like, we were talking earlier and you said it's kind of like the wild, wild west. I think that's one of the terms.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I think anyone, and I even suggest this to anyone who's going into e-commerce. I always tell them, I'm like, listen, before you get into e-commerce, before you start spending all this money building stores and investing in inventory, I was like, become an affiliate first. So if you want to sell whatever it is, dog collars or whatever, you have to learn how to, number one, sell, right? Meaning if you're going to be doing ads, you need to learn how to do ads. But the most important thing, right, is just you need to learn how to basically email because that's going to be your backbone. So I always tell people before you do all this, number one, see if you even like this. Become an affiliate. ClickBank has a ton of offers. Go in there, pick your offer. And not only that, but when you start doing that after, at least you'll have a list. So when you do start your e-commerce store, right, at least you'll have a bank of buyers already ready to go. And you're not going to be so afraid, right? Because again, when a lot of people that get into e-commerce, again, they're sold the dream, right? And that's one of the things I hate about this industry, right? This industry is so good at selling the dream of, you can have your own e-commerce store, you'll make millions of dollars. but they never tell you the truth of, okay, that millions of dollars, you realize there's no profit. And not only did you make $1 million, you lost 50,000. So, this is why whenever, people are out there with their ClickFunnels stuff and, parading about how much they made, it's like, it's all deception. It's all deception. So that's why I think it's really important. Don't get me wrong. Of course, there's a lot of people that are successful at it, but there's a lot of times we both know that you're not getting the full story.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You're getting the pretty version of the story that what they basically want to do is they're just selling you a product, right? Again, if you're going to do anything, start as an affiliate because you will learn so much about the way the industry works. But not only that, you'll get a thicker skin, and that's what you need. If you're going to be in the online world, you have to develop a thick skin and not care what people say, not care what your customers say. Don't get me wrong, your customers, you listen to them. But in terms of criticisms or things like that, them telling you what to do, you have to sort of avoid that, right? So I think that's why it's really important that if you're going to do anything, start off as an affiliate first so you can get a good idea of what you're doing.
Those are really two very powerful, valuable tips that you just gave there. Start out as an affiliate and don't worry so much about what people think. That is
absolutely, yeah,
great advice.
And you'll notice when you're an affiliate, you were an affiliate. I'm sure again, again, I don't know what kind of affiliate marketing were you doing? Were you doing display or?
I was doing email and some display. Yeah.
Okay.
But I was throwing mud at the wall and hoping something would stick. I was not consistent about anything. I'd get excited about something. I'd send out a promotion, or I'd run some ads and then they would either work or they wouldn't work. And I'm like, I'm going to try something else. And then 2 or 3 weeks go by and I wouldn't try anything. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So I was not committed, It really, nutraceuticals. One of my earlier clients in 2000, I did a campaign for a guy and he went into the affiliate space, right? And I created the marketing for his affiliates for him to, provide for his affiliates. And we were generating about $250,000 a day on this product. And it was phenomenal. He thought I just walked on water. And, looking back, it was a different time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was, pre-show when we were talking about this, or if you mentioned it just a few minutes ago, but you said something to the effect that you could put an offer out there and just make money all day long because there were so many, it
was open.
Yeah, it was open.
It was open.
Competition is much different nowadays. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's why whenever something is brand new, it's easy to sort of, same thing with Facebook, right? When Facebook started running ads too, it was open all to affiliates, right? Because this is what they always do first. What they always do first is they always open to affiliates because they know affiliates, right? They're the ones who spend money on traffic. And then what do they do, right? Once they build their ad network or whatever it is that's big enough, what do? No more affiliates. Right. This is exactly what Facebook did. Right. So that's why whenever there's a new platform that comes out or anything new, it's like first thing to do is the affiliates go after it. Right. It's what they do. Right. They sort of bombard it until they're no longer allowed to, because we all know it all takes one bad affiliate to ruin everything. Right.
Right. Yeah.
One bad affiliate to literally ruin it for everyone because they don't follow guidelines. They're doing some black hat crap or whatever it is. Right. Because they're just greedy. Right? They're just they're not happy making that $1 million a day. They got to make 10 million that day.
Right.
And trust me, I've had clients like that where literally they would complain to me because it was like, oh, I only made $100,000 today. And I was like, oh, well, there's people that don't even make that in a year.
Right. Right.
And you're complaining you didn't make that in a day. So again, it's a different world. It's a crazy world when you are an affiliate, or when you even have a product, right? It's because, again, depending on how you're pushing it. And of course, we all know that Nutri offers, diet offers, right? There's two things that always make money, which is diet and beauty, right? It's anything anti-aging, whatever it is, anything involved in that, that those are the two niches that always make money. Always.
Do you still do a lot of work in the affiliate space, like from the standpoint of offering courses that people can learn how to do that, or
do you
stay away from it?
Well, no, I mean, I don't, it's not that I don't teach it. I mean, the framework is all the same, right? Because it's all e-commerce, right? So it doesn't mean because you're an affiliate, the strategy changes for email, right? The only thing that kind of changes a little bit is, basically learning how to pick your offers and learning how to optimize those offers, right? So I do actually have a training in my course where I basically, if you're an affiliate, right, I have a bonus thing just for affiliates if you want to look. I basically showed how we optimize offers, right? Because that's the whole thing is, as an affiliate, right, especially an email affiliate, at least for me, back in the day, one of the hardest things was to find a runner offer like anything else, right? Because what happens when you find a good offer, right? A lot of those things, they get capped or they get taken away, right? So with email, again, you're only limited by the amount by your offer and your email list. So, that's why whenever people come to me, affiliates, they're always kind of afraid in terms of how much to spend. It's like, well, how much money you want to make? Right?
Yeah.
Like, like back in the day when I was doing it, I was making $1,000 a day and literally I wouldn't work more than half an hour a day. Seriously, it wouldn't take me more than half an hour. And I was like, I'm happy making $1,000 a day. I'm happy spending that time.
Yeah.
I could have spent probably 8 hours, right? Making more, but for me, it wasn't worth it. I was like, I'm happy with that. So it really comes down to what it is that you want to do, right? And what you're able to basically do capacity wise. For me, like I said, I just like the easy way. For me, it was just
Yeah.
easy and that's what I kind of stuck to. But other people, again, they wanted to make, whatever it is, a couple thousand, 5-10 grand a day. For me, that wasn't my goal.
Right. So tell me about list building. How does list building tie into what you do, and what do you teach about that?
List building it depends on what it is that you're trying to do, right? I mean, obviously, there's people who list build, right? Who all they want to do is just sell it for the piece of real estate, right? Like if you look at something like, what was it? I think what was it, like The Hustle? I don't know, that magazine or that some sort of, online magazine or something, Hustle or something. I forget what it was, or I think it was The Hustle or something.
Yeah.
It was something like that. I forget what it was, but it made the news there, obviously, in the online world about how much it got sold for, how many millions of dollars the list got sold for. And I remember reading that and I was like, not for anything, but I was like, and I would read some of their emails, but I was like, their emails are shit. Don't get me wrong. They may have, it wasn't that they were shit. It was just the fact that they weren't monetizing their list. So again, you need to understand that, the email list is a piece of real estate. That's what it is, right? You own it. No one can take it from you, right? And it really is a piece of real estate that if you have this e-commerce store, whatever it is, or you're list building, right? You're either list building it to build your own store, right? To build your own products, or you're list building to sell it to other people, right? Because it's a piece of real estate. Which again, you need to understand what it is that you're doing, right? So this is why whenever people come to me, or if someone has an e-commerce store, it's like, well, you have two pieces of real estate there, right? You have your store, which is one, and you have your email list, right? That's why it's really important to me. Back in the day, we would buy a bunch of e-commerce store lists that weren't monetizing it, right? We would buy it for cheap because they didn't monetize it, right? And it was up to us to actually qualify that list. So the reason why, when The Hustle sold it for all those millions, I was like, whoever bought that, I'm like, you're going to have a hard time trying to actually get money. Not to say that it wouldn't generate money. I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. But the whole point is they never really qualified their list by actually trying to sell products, right? They just got a bunch of people who like to read their shit, which is great, right? But, one of the things that I teach is if you're not qualifying a user right off the bat, I'm not saying, and again, you have to understand sales cycles, right? I mean, obviously you want someone, as a copywriter, you want someone to buy within the first 7 days, right? And it's not about selling them a high ticket product. It's just about getting them to buy, just take out their wallet for $1. That's all it takes, right? That $1. So it's all about qualifying that user first. It's not about being able to sell them a $10,000 product, right? It's about being able to qualify that user right off the bat to say, okay, this is a buyer. And not to say that there's no value with lurkers, because there's still value with lurkers, right? Again, you just need to understand I hate saying this, but the devil that you're dealing with, right? And that's the big thing is you need to understand that. So there's nothing wrong with a lurker, right? There's a place for lurkers in the email space, right? They're good for certain things. They're not good for everything. But that's what I would basically preface when it comes to list building is you have to qualify a user. All you're doing is building up lists just to be like, oh, I have a list of 10,000 people or 1,000,000 people. Like I tell people all the time, it's like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a list of 1,000,000 people and make $100? Or would you rather have a list of 1,000 people and make 10 grand? Right? I
Right.
mean, the choice is yours, right? So that's what it is, right? It's really just understanding what you're dealing with.
Yeah. When I talk to anybody and they tell me about their list size,
It's an ego thing. It's like guys, it's all about
yeah.
size. It's like, no, man.
I was just about to make that, and I was like, I don't want to make an inappropriate reference here, but it's the same crap, right? Like, oh, I got 800,000 people on my list. And I'm like, what's your engagement rate? How many, out of those 800,000, what percentage are clicks and opens?
You're absolutely right. And I see this all the time in the e-commerce space where people I call it number porn because I'm like, it's number porn. I'm like, guys, they'll show snapshot. It's their list. Like, look how much money I made, guys. Look, we made 10 grand today on our email list. And then I actually look at the opens and clicks. I'm like, that's shit. I'm like, you realize that that 10 grand you made, you literally could have made 100 grand. Your metrics are crap, but it's number porn. It's just, people are just like, wow, you made all that money without understanding what they're looking at, So that's the part of it that just sort of like, every time I see that, I'm just like, okay, next.
Yeah. Working on the inside with like high value clients, high profile clients,
Mm-hmm.
I have seen some really crazy shit. So, as you may know, my brother Joe Polish, he runs Genius Network and 25K Group. And so I'm privy to a lot of stuff that some other people don't know about, right? And some of the folks that come into that group and they share about what they've done, their numbers. What's being presented to the world and what's really being deposited in the bank are like night and day.
Yeah.
And it just cracks me up. I never really bought into that kind of shit. I was just, to me, it's been more important to be authentic. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'd love to have people brag and say Tony is freaking fantastic and he's amazing and, applause. I love all that stuff, but not at the cost of my integrity. And I just, here's the thing. I think it's damaging. All right. I think it's damaging for somebody to go out there and say, we did a $2.5 million launch in 2 days. Right.
Yeah.
And so then you got Joe Entrepreneur who's like trying to do stuff and he's just, nothing is working and they're modeling what these gurus are doing and they don't understand, why is this not working? I understand I don't have the same name recognition or the same list or the same credibility, but let's scale that down. I'm doing the same kind of stuff. It's a message to market match. Why aren't I raking in the dollars? And it's because there's deception, but we could go on forever about that. I want to ask you about this. So you talk about optimization. Like that is really the key to, really succeeding. What do you look at in your clients to figure out how to optimize something?
Number one thing I look at is mindset. It's the first thing, right? So one of the things I always want to do is I want to be able to see, number one, is this client, is he open or fixed, right? Because I cannot work with a client who has a very fixed mindset. I'm sure you've experienced that before. I'm not here to argue with you. You're not paying me to argue with you. You're paying me to serve you and to help you, right? So that's one of the things that I look for first. If it's very clear that you're fixed, then okay, there's no working with you. And afterwards, when it comes to the optimization is once again, right? You have to be open to change and being open to doing things differently, right? Because again, I'm sure you've worked with clients and they're so used to doing something a certain way. It's very hard, right? It's very hard for them to let go, right? And especially if it's an e-commerce thing, a lot of them are very attached to their brand like a child, which is just not good. right? So those are the things that I look for. I look for, someone who's basically has just an, open mindset, who isn't fixed, and someone who is ready and ready to embrace the change. Like, yes, I know that I need to change things, and I'm ready for it, right? So you really have to have that openness. If you don't, then it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be very, very hard because again, you're just, even now I'm kind of going through a client who's at that point right now where he knows he needs to change because he's, things are not going to get better, but he's got to make those changes. But it's tough, it's tough for him, so it's one of those things where it's like, well, you're going to have to get over this hurdle in order to be able to get to the next step, right? So those are the things that I look for, because once we're able to do that, then we're able to really focus on what's important, which is, again, right, the numbers. And this is what I always tell my clients. Listen, you can have, there's a reason why, assumption, they say, makes an ass out of you and me, because it's true, right? When you assume, you lose, right? You never, ever, ever, ever want to make an assumption, ever. And that was, I think, one of the best lessons I learned as an affiliate was back in the day when I was this account manager was pushing this Bible offer on me, and she's like, "Oh, we have this Bible offer. You might want to consider it. Check it out." And I was like, "No, man, just leave me alone. I'm not gonna do it." The way affiliate managers are, they're just on you all the time, right? And then one day I lost one of my proven offers. I was like, you know what? I said, "Okay, fine, I'll run it. Right? Give me the offer." I ran it. That offer to this day, and I always tell this story because I was like, I learned the lesson that day. That offer to this day is one of my top 3 offers. It converted at 60%.
Oh my gosh.
Unheard of. And this wasn't like a $2 CPA. This was like, I think it was like a $45 CPA. It was crazy.
Wow.
I remember I was doing everything to get more traffic. I was like, okay, I need more lists. I was like, I need more volume, give me more volume, more volume. I was like, I need to run traffic to this. And from that day, I was like, never again am I going to judge a book by its cover when it comes to offers. I'm not going to assume anything. I'm going to test it. And that, I was so grateful for that, because I was grateful because I was like, if I wouldn't have gone through that, I would have probably had that assumption model in my mind, right? Of, I don't think this is going to work. Let's not do it, right? Because it doesn't fit with me, right? And no, so that's why I'm a huge advocate of, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things I've learned over time, things that don't work, things that do work, but I will always test everything. I'm like, nope, test it once, doesn't work, we'll test it a second time. If it fails, move on, right? But I think that's, like I said, the biggest thing when it comes to learning how to optimize.
So that 2-strike method, is that kind of your baseline there, the way that you work, the test it twice, if it doesn't work? Yeah. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. So you need to be careful, right? Especially with email, right? And trust me, it's happened before too, where, we sent a bunch of traffic, we would get like a bunch of clicks, and it's happened a couple of times. That's why, again, you really have to know how to test, and you really have to understand what you're dealing with. And, we had sent, I think it was like close to like 1,500 clicks. It was unheard of. It was like, wow, like what's going on here, right? Like it was a ton of clicks, and we were expecting conversions, and we got no conversions. To find out that the advertiser page had gone down. So I was like, shit. I was like, the advertiser page went down. And that was terrible. And then we tested a second time. We got probably the half amount of clicks because we sent it again. But the conversions were still there. Like the conversion was still very high. So I was like, shit, imagine if we had converted on the first one, how much we would have made, right? So again, it could have been very easy for me to disprove that first test, to be like, sent all these clicks, so the crap offer, right?
Right.
But again, I understood that, okay, there must have been something that happened, right? So that's when I contacted, the advertiser directly, saying what's going on here, and the advertiser said, shit, we're sorry, servers went down, everything went to shit, and it happens, right? So this is why you need to understand. So that's why it's like I have that 2-strike rule, only because, again, sometimes there could be something with the advertiser page. Sometimes it could also be, again, depending on the segment of your list, right? Depending who you're sending it to, the time of day, like those things make a difference. They're not huge differences, don't get me wrong, right? They do still make a difference. So it's important to understand that.
Sure. It's absolutely important to go and investigate and see, what actually is going on here. Because it's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day about the Bad News Bears movie, like 1976. And I don't know if you know that assumption little scene where the coach is writing on the board, explaining to the players, never assume anything. And he draws a line between the ass, never you can make an ass out of you or me. But assumptions, early in my career, caused me a lot of problems. And for me, I think that was ego based. And I learned relatively quickly that, what may seem obvious isn't always correct. And just like you, there were offers that I thought this is going to bomb, right? And it killed it. When I was working for this one kind of famous guy, got famous in real estate. Now he's more into motivational speaking, but we tested 24 different offers for a landing page. And there were two that I thought, and I put these together, okay? We had a designer do them, but I put them together and I was like, these were okay, but I think this one over here is going to crush it. And you know what? It was not the one that I thought was going to crush it that crushed it. And it just was like, man, how long have I been doing this now? 20 something years. And I still can't always figure out the test. It's like, you got to test, man. You got to test. So I love that. What is one thing that you focus on when you're going and looking at somebody's email to, is there something that stands out to you as, okay, this is the thing we'll look at first?
Yes. So basically there's a 5-point framework, right? Like anything else too, right? I'm sure when you're doing a sales page copy, right, you know that there's certain things you have to hit, right? If you don't hit those things, it's not going to be as effective, right?
Right.
So email's exactly the same. I developed a 5 points based on my experience and based on what I know works, right? Again, email marketing a lot of people think that it's sales page when it's not. Again, you have to understand it's the same deal. An advertisement is not to sell the product, right? Or a display ad is not to sell the product. You're trying to drive traffic. That's the point, right? So email is exactly the same thing, right? The big misconception is you're trying to sell an email when that's not the point. The point is just you got to drive traffic, right? So the 5-point system is really, really simple. Besides the basics of what needs to be in copy, right? Which is headline, pain point, right? You dig into that pain point, right? You get someone to say yes, right? And then there's a call to action, right? So that's your basic framework for all ads, right? Because it's an ad. But the thing that I look for, the main things are, number one is the email focus, right? So, and you'll sometimes read a lot of emails and they're not focused. They're sort of all over the place talking about different things. It's like, it's just too confusing, right? The other thing too is cow versus milk, right? So I always tell people, are you giving away the cow or are you letting them taste the milk? Because if you're giving away the cow, there's no reason for them to click, right? And your objective, your number one objective in an email, is not to sell a product. That's not your job. Your job is to drive traffic, is to get that click. That's why whenever people tell me that you have a trick for email, I was like, very simple, sell the click. Don't sell the product, right? And for a lot of e-commerce people, that's like it's a relief for them, right?
Yeah.
Because for them, a lot of people are like, oh, good. You don't have to sell a product? No, you don't. All you got to do is sell the click, right? That's all you have to do is sell that. So that's why I say cow versus milk. And the other one, I feel like I'm forgetting it. Oh, you'll like this one, the ego versus benefits, right? And we see this a lot of copywriting, right?
Right.
Is it ego-based where all you're doing is talking about, look how great our product is, right? It's so great, right? You can buy 2 for 1 and all this sort of stuff, right? Versus what's the benefit, right? As a copywriter, you're trying to sell the sizzle, not the steak, right? That's what you're doing. So that's what I basically teach people in the framework is that's what you're doing. So it's that 5-point framework. And when you have all those things, then you have killer. Then you know that you're going to have a good email because that's the point. The point is to drive that traffic, make sure it's focused, right? To make sure you're not giving away everything. Make sure you're not talking about, make sure it's not ego-based. Make sure it's just benefit-based for the consumer, not for you, right? So once people sort of understand that, trust me, it's a huge relief off people's shoulders to be like, oh, wow, okay. Because, a lot of people struggle with that. They struggle with it's funny because when I got into this industry, I didn't even know what copywriting was. I had no idea, right? I just wrote emails the way I thought, like headline, pain point. That's what I did. I did
Yeah.
that. I was successful for 10 years before ever even knowing the term copywriting. I was like, what is copywriting? And I have to actually say is I wouldn't say I got worse, but I'll say this. I think things got a lot more confusing when I actually started to learn copywriting
Yeah.
because I feel like I started to doubt what came naturally to me.
Right.
Like, I don't know if you experienced this, but again, like
I
I'm just
have.
I'm a natural writer. I write with emotion. I sort of understand what people are looking for. And then when you start getting into copywriting, you have all these rules and stuff because you're like, oh, is it following this rule? Is it following this rule? And that's why I get overwhelmed. Like even with sales pages, like when I have to write a sales page, I won't lie to you. Like sometimes it's overwhelming because it's too much for me because there's too many things you have to follow. And I'm like, ugh. I'm used to email. Give me email all day long.
Yeah.
Sales pages, it's just too many guidelines for me to follow. It's a lot. So that's why for me, I found that before I really got into this, I think I was better just not knowing these things. So I don't know how it was for you, but that was my experience.
Well, how it is for me now, 30 years into this gig, is that I have to really intentionally get connected to my heart when I write because, and it is true, the longer that we live, I think, and this isn't true for everyone, but for me, I like to learn stuff. I like to do things right. I'm always fighting this perfectionist, approval seeking, part of me, right? And so I want to do it right. I want to get it right. I hate to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you get it right? Well, you learn how to do it right.
Yeah.
There's always a right way to do things. So you look at a sales page and, is this following the AIDA method? Is this the PAS? Are the benefits there? Like, is my call to action or my testimonials in the right place? What is the structure of this thing? Are my paragraph breaks properly? Is there too much text here? Like you start looking at all the technical aspects at the expense of the emotional connection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this happened for me as a professional actor too, when and I think this is relevant. So, before I got my first professional theater contract, man, I was always on fire emotionally about the characters and the scenes. But then when I got my first professional theater contract, like I moved in with this established troupe in Louisville, Kentucky, and they were all tight, right? It was the #1 children's theater in the country that I was working at. And I was like the new kid and I didn't feel connected to them. And so I got so focused on like doing everything right, that it no longer became fun. It was drudgery. Yeah. And I started second guessing myself and I started going, do I even know anything? Can I even act? Like, do I even belong here? And one of the things that I do when I actually teach people marketing and copywriting is we just write letters, and I say, look, I want you to talk to Gary Halbert did this beautiful thing years ago in seminars. And I don't know did you ever have a chance to be in any of that, any copywriting seminars?
No, I've heard of him. I've definitely read his stuff, but no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't need it for 10 years. You just intuitively came from the heart and said what you needed to. But, for when he was training copywriters, he would have us write letters to our mother, but he would dictate the letter. Okay. And it would start out really nice. And then it would go into, you are the most horrible, wicked piece of shit I've ever met in my life. I can't even believe that I am, related to you. Every time I think about who you are, I shudder. I'm in shame. And like the audience is going crazy. Oh. He gets to the end of the letter, you seal it up, you put it in the envelope. Oh, this is the best part. He makes everybody address the envelope to your mom to begin with before you write the letter, put it in the envelope, and then he collects them. And then after he's collected and everybody's terrified, he's like, we're not going to mail those. You're going to pick them up later. He goes, but I want you to get the importance of emotion behind a letter and what is being said. It's like, if you send the right message to the right audience with the right emotion, it's going to land. If you send the wrong message to the audience, it's going to have a different effect. And so the fact that you intuitively knew to talk from a place of authenticity and emotion about the benefits and what's in it for them. Really, that's what comes down to copywriting. And so when I'm trying to teach people that, I start with, let's throw out all the technical stuff. We can bring some of that in later. But the more I found focusing on the technical stuff, the less connected I am to my heart. And the best copy, they say when the muse shows up, use the muse. The best copy from me comes when I am really connected to something. It just flows.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. That's why when I, was doing copywriting for email for clients, one of the things that I would do, or at least this was my technique, was I would just really have to immerse myself into everything around that. Right. So I have to learn everything about that. And not only that, but I would go out and look at what people are saying, how people feel about certain things, to really sort of just understand the emotional aspect, right? Because that's, like you said, that's where you connect. You don't connect on someone on, just buy this, right? No, you're not, you don't connect on that. You're connecting on the person's values, right? And that's another thing that I teach right off the bat is you have to understand. And I always tell people, it was kind of, I always explain this list building as a tree, right? And the roots, right? The roots are the people that are coming in, right? And they're all coming in, right? Because they're trying to, satiate a pain or desire, right? So that's what they're doing. They're going in, right? And then it goes into the list, which is the trunk, right? And then it spreads out into the branches, which are different segments, right? And you need to understand that those people that are coming in for a reason. Now, you're not going to have, 100 different types of audiences. You're not, right?
Right.
You know that your core audience is going to revolve around 3 to 5 things. That's what they're going to revolve around, right? So that's what it is. I always teach people, you have to understand your audience. If you don't know, right? And a lot of people, especially if you're e-commerce and you're driving ads, you know who your avatar is, right? You know who you're going after. You're going after maybe that single woman, right? Maybe you're going after a father who has kids or a divorcee. You know who you're going after, right? So it's important. I always say you have to understand your audience before you can actually write an email, because even when you're writing emails, even though you have a list of 1 million people, you can't speak to your entire audience at once.
Right.
You have to pick one of them and go after that guy. So the next day, you go after the other guy. Right? And that's what you got to go, because you can't go after all of them, right? You got to be very strategic. So that's why it's like, yes, it's important that you know your audience, because you got to be able to tap into that emotion to be able to speak to that person. Right? So it's definitely a good point that you said that. The other interesting thing that you said is you went to theater school, because even I went to theater school too. I did that for a while, and I felt the exact same way actually when I was in theater, where I quit after 2 years. Like it took me 2 years to get into it. And then the second year I quit. I was like, it wasn't for me. Like it was a weird feeling. It was a very weird feeling. I mean, it was a great experience. Don't get me wrong. It was a very interesting experience, but, theater. How did you like that?
I loved it.
Really?
So here's the thing. When I started studying marketing, I started studying it because I wanted to promote myself as an actor. And Joe had a failing carpet cleaning business, and we're both studying marketing. And I used marketing and copywriting to get my roles. I did an HBO movie, I did commercials, and I had an agent, but everything that I got was a result of me sending direct mail to casting agents. And that was my dream. It was always a dream growing up to be an actor, but my dad kind of poo-pooed that. So I moved in a different direction. And then when I, got steeped in my drug addiction and was lost for a few years coming out of that, I kind of rediscovered myself. Like, what do I really want to do? And it was acting. And so I used the marketing for that. And, life threw me a curveball in the midst of that. I was coming out of this professional theater. I did 3 world premiere plays. It was an amazing experience. I taught at a performing arts school also. It was fantastic. But life threw me a curveball, and I wound up, being a father to a couple stepsons that I raised, and it was probably the best choice in my life to do that. It didn't feel like it at the time. For 3 years, I couldn't go to a movie without just having my heart break because I'm sitting there, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. I should be doing that. But I did a lot of church-based theater, for decades. I did some wonderful things, but the experience for me was that's probably where I feel the most alive. And here's why. So I studied method acting. Sometimes I call myself a method marketer, because I would get so steeped in the character analysis that I was that character on stage. And the best example of this was I did a production called Our Country's Good, and it's about the first colony in Australia. All the prisoners were sent over there. That's how the whole country started. And I played two characters, a British, I don't know if he was a soldier, a captain, and then an Australian prisoner. And the opening night, I have to climb up like 30 stairs to this gallows kind of thing where they're going to whip me. And I'm wearing like 3-inch heels, and I twist my ankle going up, sprained it. I come down after that scene, and it is just swollen. And my director, he saw what happened. He comes backstage and he's like, "How are you?" And I said, "Man, it hurts bad." And he told me the story. I'm really going off on a bunny trail here, but he told me the story about Yul Brynner in this movie that he did. He had, he was like a robot or something. I don't remember the name of it. Westworld, I think. But he had a scene where he got thrown from the horse and he actually fractured his back. He broke his back. And he continued doing the entire movie with a broken back. And when he was interviewed afterwards, people said, "How did you do that?" And he said, "Well, because Yul Brynner had a broken back. My character didn't." That's how deep he got into the character. And so going into this place, like on stage, I actually had control of the audience. Like, I remember running out at one production that I was in, and I was like this crazy Hispanic jealous husband looking for my wife who I thought was cheating. And I had a gun, and I come running out center stage, and this woman, like in the governor's seat, which is kind of the middle center of the theater, she literally curled up, knees up in front of her face. And I had to be, 50 feet from her, but she was terrified. And it was so powerful. I almost came out of character because like, wow, I got her. But I love evoking emotions in people, positive ones, whenever possible. Sure. I'm not really motivated by terrifying people, but I love that. I love being able to bring people joy and laughter and entertainment, and I get to do that with copy as well. I get to help motivate people to, make good decisions. So, having that theater experience has been great for me as a marketer because there's a lot of parallels in, when you're trying to figure out who your avatar is, who your ideal audience is. As an actor, it's like, what's my motivation? What am I, why am I doing this? Who am I? Who do I relate to? What do the people around me care about? There's a lot of parallels there. So it served me. And whenever I have an opportunity to do some of that, I take it. There was a lot of years where I didn't, but I'm hoping that as I move on in my career, that I'll be able to chance to do some more of that because that's really fun.
Yeah.
Why did you not like theater?
Going back to that whole, it was a couple of things. The biggest struggle I had was the fact that I knew the industry that I was going to go in was not going to be based on my talent, especially as a woman, right? At the time, I remember I'm lucky enough, my sister lives in California. She lived in LA. And she had gone, obviously, to LA to become an actress. So I sort of saw her struggle. And I remember thinking really hard. I mean, I took the whole summer. I took a couple of months to really sort of decide because I was like, man, I've spent 2 years trying to get into this school, and now I can't believe I'm thinking about leaving it. It was tough, but I really had to do a lot of soul searching because I was like, I know my character and I know this industry. I was like, this is not going to be based on talent. This is going to be based on who I know and what I'm willing to do in order to get somewhere. And I was not willing to put my values, at risk in order to get to a certain place. And I wasn't going to have someone tell me, you're too fat, you're too this, you're too that, you don't fit that. My psyche would not be able to, I just wouldn't be able to do that. I'm not going to have you tell me no. And I knew that that was the industry. That was going to be the industry, and I'm sure that that that's what the industry is like. If you don't fit that exact mold that they want, you're not good enough.
Right.
Right. And so maybe I didn't have the thick skin enough to do it. And, so that's what kind of, I was like, no, this is just not for me. Right. It's just not for me. Maybe I didn't have enough of a desire to do it, because acting was just one of those things that I thought, okay, maybe I'll try it. I'll do it. Then again, at the age of 16, you're kind of like, you're told, okay, go pick what you want to do.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I have no clue. Obviously in hindsight, if I could do it all over, I would do it completely different, right? I would do it totally different, but that's the avenue that I went because I had to pick something. So I did. It wasn't, again, I'm very grateful for going through it, because again, I learned a lot, right? I learned a lot about, number one, just, in theater, you have to learn how to move and really you got to really embrace your body, right? So you really have to learn how to do that. And I think it really helped me kind of get over a lot of insecurities I had with my body. At the same time, too, it helped me really kind of get over being able to speak in front of people, right? Being able to speak, I don't have any issues speaking in front of people. Don't get me, I still get nervous, whatever, but I just do it, right? It's one thing in acting. You got to do it in theater. You just got to get up. You don't sing. You may not be a great singer, but you sing, right? You just do it, right? So I'm definitely, I appreciate that aspect, because again, I don't see it as being a waste, but for me, like I said, it wasn't for me long term, because I just didn't see myself in that industry. And, yeah, a lot like you too, there was at least for me, I found, especially watching theater, before I used to enjoy watching theater, but then when I got into it and I understood all the technical aspects, watching it wasn't fun anymore. Because there I was that's not right. They're doing this. It was just it took the joy out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So I was it was too much in my head. I went from being able to just sit there and oh wow, just enjoy it. Now even if I go watch a little kiddie theater, I'm still kind of I got to put that analytical side behind and be okay, just don't analyze it. Just sit there, just enjoy it. So I've learned to embrace it again, but it was tough. It was tough because I found it took the joy that I had from it before because of the technical aspect of it that I now learned.
Got it. So you talked about values, and you just mentioned that you're in your head a lot. Do you consider yourself an analyzer?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I'm doing my best to sort of get out of my head now, right? Because the analytical aspect is a very masculine trait, right? We know it's being analytical is a masculine thing, right? I don't know if you sort of, believe in the whole masculine feminine deal, but, I do. It took me a while to sort of understand that a lot of things that I was doing, weren't very feminine. They're just very masculine, and it was it definitely explained a lot of things in terms of why I did certain things, why I felt certain things, but definitely I would say I am and that's why I'm great on the email side, because it's very analytical. All you do is just look at stats, and I love that because there's at least for me, there's an assurity behind it, right? There's a confidence behind it because the numbers tell you, right? There's no assumption. This is what it is. Look at it, and it's clear what you have to do next, right? You don't need to assume things. You just look at the numbers, right? So definitely, I am, I would say, very analytical, working my hardest now to not be so much and just kind of, rely more. I wouldn't say so much on the heart, but just rely on the body and just sort of listening to that as opposed to overanalyzing everything.
Yeah. I'm a doer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much you know about recovery or addiction, but one of the things that they really tell us when we first come in is most of us are human doings and we're not human beings. So I got introduced to this concept 30 something years ago. But recently, I enrolled in this leadership training, and they really took me to this point of who are you being? And I was like, what do you mean? And it's a subtle little shift. But when you meet somebody or you call somebody up they haven't talked to for a while, or even somebody is, what's usually one of the first questions out of our mouths? How are you doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How are you doing? If you meet somebody for the first time, what do you do?
I hate that question. I hate it.
And, that's the question I opened up our interview with today was, what do you do? And I thought about, shocking you by saying, hey, how are you being?
How am I being?
But, yeah, because when we think about it, like, how am I being? So my stand for myself now is I am a joyful, generous, loving leader. That's how I'm being. Now, does that mean I'm always being that way? No, but that's who I am. So whenever my behavior doesn't line up with that, I get to check myself and say, okay, how am I showing up here? Who am I being right now? Well, you're being a greedy, self-centered, terrified, whatever, right? And that's not who I am. So I think part of shifting out of, because I am a controlling analyzer. I didn't know that. I knew I was an analyzer. My wife bought me this beautiful little plaque that says, hang on while I overthink about that. And it was so perfect. I was like, yeah, I'm the guy that feels standing in front of the bread aisle going, should I get the Dave's Killer bread or should I get the sourdough? I don't know, 20 minutes. But this concept of, really thinking about who I'm being gets me out of that in my head stuff. And, you mentioned the masculine and the feminine, and I think that we, all of us have the capability to shift between. There's a lot of different personality tests and stuff. The one that was applied when it came to this controlling analyzer thing, there was two other levels, a supporter and a promoter. Mm-hmm. And it's just the styles of personality that we, kind of portray our operating system, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I think we all have the capabilities, and we ought to shift into whatever we need to. But primarily we operate in one, like we park our car in one space. Okay. So my car was parked in the controller space and I didn't realize that. And unpacking it, finding out where those things come from, like I grew up in an environment where I never knew what was going to happen. I had abuse. Like I'm always trying to control things, right? Didn't realize I was trying to control things. Yeah. And I avoided even taking a look at that because my judgment about somebody was controlling is negative. Like, oh, you're a controlling person. I don't want to be around you. You're an asshole. But it's important because now I realize that I can shift into a healthy or an unhealthy controller, a healthy or an unhealthy analyzer. The healthy analyzer is the one that takes a look at the data and makes decisions based on what the truth is. An unhealthy analyzer is one that starts second guessing everything. And like, yo, man, do I really know anything? Am I really doing a good job here? Do I really matter? Those kinds of things. So this idea of like your values, and you said you had shown up with an awful lot of masculine traits, analyzing being one of them. Did something happen where you said, man, I really need to shift? I really want to shift?
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, I always, here's the thing is, I always, not that there was something wrong with me, right? But, obviously I knew there was something because I wasn't, again, there's that old saying that you attract what you give, right? And, and it's not that I didn't believe in that. It's not so much you attract what you give, it's you attract what you think you deserve, right? And, I always knew, I was like, okay, there's something wrong with me, but there's obviously something. There's something that I'm not able to get the things that I want. Why couldn't I attract the men that I wanted, right? Why is it relationships would always end this way? Like, what was happening? It was something, right? Like, I thought I was doing all the right things, right? I thought, but I was like, I just don't get it, right? And I remember a lot of times too, I mean, guys would, tell me, it's like, oh, I'd walk into a room and guys would be like, oh, you have sorry to say this, but you have a bigger dick than most guys in this room. And it's like, I never took that as a compliment. I was like, it's not a compliment. I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do. But it took this guy once that I met at a conference. He was an army vet. And he just clearly explained it to me. You're a very attractive woman. You have a lot of, great feminine qualities, but he's like, you're very masculine. And I was like, what does that mean exactly? Like, that's when I started to explain. I was like, well, can you explain what that means? Because I'd like to know this so that I can understand what I'm doing, right? And he just sort of explained to just like subtle things, like just the way that you sort of move, the way that you sort of talk, and not only that, the things that you do, right? Like, I thought that, again, like, sometimes I go on dates with guys and, as a woman, we don't like to seem like a burden. So sometimes I would like secretly pay for the bill or whatever it is, or doing certain things, only because I thought, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. I thought I was doing a good thing when in reality, to like a masculine man, like doing that is emasculating. And I didn't know these things. I didn't know it was emasculating to do these things, right? And again, because whenever people would commend me on being independent, I'd be like, listen, I didn't ask to be independent. I was made this way. I was made this way because, again, I grew up with a father just like you. Again, we most of us grew up with some sort of trauma, in terms of not having a parent that was, for me, I didn't grow up with a very protective father, so again, I was made this way where I had to learn how to protect myself and defend myself. I never knew what it was like to have a man sort of protect me and just have that comfort of knowing it. So we develop these traits, right? Same with you, right? You were in an unstable environment. So for you, learning how to control things was your safety, right? So,
Right.
And it took you probably time to figure that out, to be like, oh shit, this came from, being a kid. So same with me, where it's like all these things sort of came about where it's like, okay, like that's where I knew, where that guy told me, I was like, okay, now I need to really learn about this masculine and feminine, right? And I really started to learn about even just my body language, just the way that I would sort of present myself, the way that I just sort of am with people, just the way that I am with men now. It's very different, right? So for me, it was just that point where that guy told me, I was like, okay, all right. Then because again, I was open to it. I'm like, what is the problem here? What am I doing wrong? Right. So part of it is, is definitely being open to changing it. Right. So, and I was definitely open. I was like, okay, I know I need to change stuff because again, it doesn't make any sense. Right. It makes no sense. I don't know what's going on. What am I doing wrong? I'm not a perfect person by any means. Right. But I'm not the worst person either. There's tons of other people that are probably worse than me that are married and happy-go-lucky. I was like,
Right.
It doesn't make sense. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my experience with it. It was, just someone's kind of sitting me down and just being like, this is it, right? So, and I try to do my part also with people sometimes when I sort of see that, to be like, oh, well, first I'll always ask them if they're open to it, right? Because not everyone's open to it.
Right. Get permission.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to have permission. You can't just go in there. It's more like, okay, listen, I see something. Are you open to, you open to feedback as to what I see, right? And that's it. So that was an interesting experience. It was definitely a life-changing experience for me, where a lot of things changed after that. So I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome. Can you tell me about a time in your life when you were faced with a situation that you maybe didn't know how you were going to get through, or was so maybe overwhelming or painful that you were just brought to a point of hopelessness, and then somehow you found a way out of it?
Yeah, I have a great story about that. That's actually how I got into email marketing, actually. How I got into email marketing. Long story short, basically, and I was young. I was 26 at the time, right? 26 at the time, and I just gotten back from California. It's been 6 months in California. You know how California is, the West Coast. It's like, you're all love and light, and it's all great and everything, right? So I came back here, and
Especially at
I met
26.
a guy, and I started dating him reluctantly. He chased me for a while, and I was like, no, 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 no. I started dating him, and before I knew it, he basically, took me for about $35,000.
Mm.
Literally in like a month, it was like gone. And then it was like, dumped me, went on to someone new, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I was devastated. I mean, here I was, 35 grand in the hole now, where I've never been in the hole. I've always been, I've always been very good with money and things like that. And I was completely distraught. I was like, well, what do I do? And I was in a very, very bad place, very dark place, because, number one, here, I felt so betrayed, because here I thought someone I loved and someone I cared about, and they just completely ripped me off. Right. So there's that betrayal of, oh my God, I thought I was in love, but it was all bullshit. Right. And on top of this, now I got to pay, I ended up finding out, obviously, he was a cocaine addict and all that sort of stuff. So I also felt betrayed by the people around him who didn't tell me. I was like, no one told me. So I felt so much betrayal. And at the same time, too, I wasn't working, because I just came back from LA and I wasn't looking for work, and now I have this debt that I have to pay. Right. So I was like, what do we do? Right. It's not, obviously there were things that I had to do in order to, because again, the other part of me too was, I'm not going to have this guy get away with it. Right. So there were certain things during that year that I had to do that, again, I always find that there's, that's why I always tell people, sometimes in the darkest time in your life, something great can happen to it, because that to me was the darkest time. During that year was a dark time for me. I mean, there were things that I did that I'm not proud of. There's things that I had to do in order to get back that money. I mean, I ended up getting some, but again, I had to do things, right, that I wasn't proud of, right? But again, it shaped me as a person, and it also, taught me, it also brought me to the thing that would, bring me so much success in life afterwards. So that's what I'm saying is, during that time, it was a very dark time. It was very bad. Like I said, I was very depressed. I was completely betrayed. I mean, it was a very, very bad time for me for a whole year. And I remember I even made a pact with myself, right? I said, okay, I made the mistake, right? I took this on myself. I was like, okay, I made the mistake. I should have known better. And trust me, even my family was like, wow, they were very surprised that I had even given this person money, because like, this is not like you to just do that. But I was like, no, I'm in love. He'll give it. It's like, oh, all this sort of stupid stuff, right? My views on money have changed now. It's like, if anyone asks to borrow money, I'm like, unless I can lose that money, I'm not going to give it to you.
Yeah.
If you're asking for $5,000, unless I'm ready to lose it, I ain't going to give it to you. Right. So a lot of things, that's why I was kind of, I was glad that actually happened when I was 26 and not 46, where now you have a house and you have all this sort of stuff. It would have been
10 times as much.
Debilitating.
Yeah.
It would have been crazy. Right. So that's why I was grateful. I was like, you know what? It happened to me. And that's why I also learned money's just, it's paper, right? Because I realized during that year, I made a pact to myself that I was going to pay off that debt. And I was every paycheck I had, literally 90% went to paying off that debt. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this over the next, because my brother was saying, just declare bankruptcy, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, I'm not doing that to my name for 35. I'm not doing that. I wasn't doing that. So I made a pact. I was like, listen, the day that I'm finished this, I'm like, I'm going to put the anger away, because I was still angry. I was very angry. A lot of resentment and everything for a whole year. But I remember the final day I made that payment. It was like it just was this huge relief off my chest. I was like, okay, it's over now. It's over. And 2 weeks later, I got fired from the ESP afterwards. So it was like, it's like everything's happening. I was like, it's all good. I'm going to roll with it, right? It's okay. I'll go with it. But I was just happy. It was just, like I said, to me, that was one of the darkest periods. And I always use that as an example, because for me, like I said, it was a terrible time, but so much good came out of it. So much good. And, I had a choice to, either put my effort on vengeance, on all that sort of stuff. And I said, you know what? I said, no. I said, people like him. I said, there's 2 things that happens to him. I said, I'll give him 5 years. And like, he'll either be in jail or he'll be dead. I said, 2 things will happen. It took 6 years, but he didn't end up in jail. And he's still in jail 20 years later. So I was like, that's why you really have to sort of like, it's tough. When dark things happen, bad things happen. It's hard when you're going through it, but I've always realized whenever the darkest, in your darkest moment, there's always light. There's always light at the end of it. Something good will come out of it. You know, it'll only get worse if you make it worse. And I had the choice to make it worse, right? I could have focused on vengeance. I could have focused on all sorts of negativity, but I just made that pact with myself where I was like, nope, I'm going to do this, right? And like I said, over that 1 year, I learned a lot about myself and things that I wasn't proud of and things that I would never do again. And I have not done them since then. And that's it. And I just sort of left the rest to God and karma. I was like, leave it up to that, leave it up to him. It's not up to me anymore. I did my part. I'm done.
That's a great attitude. That's really good.
Yeah.
So tell me, what matters to you the most right now in your life?
Oof, what matters to me most? It's a good question. What matters to me most right now is it's just, I think a lot of it is just staying true to my values and the things that really, really are important to me. Right? It's like I said, 2020 was a huge eye opener in terms of how sketchy some people's values are, how there's no foundation on them. There's just really no foundation. So for me, it really is just really staying true to those values and really sort of, just diving more into, this is kind of a little more off topic, but just understanding more about how the world actually really works. Not the way that we thought it works, right? The really nice cookie cutter version of how we think government controls this and all sorts of things, but really understanding, the players and everything that's happening right now. Nothing is coincidence. I do not believe in coincidences at all. I don't, right? So it's really that right now is really understanding how the things work. And, I've been studying trust law now for close to about 3 years now and really understanding what it is living in the private versus living in the public and really understanding those things. And once you start getting into trust law, you see that government's a joke. I mean, literally it's a joke. Courts are theater. I mean, it's all, again, when you start getting into this, you sort of realize all the cliches of like the world's a stage and, the devil's in the details, like all those cliches, they're not cliches, they're true.
That's
literally
right.
The world is a stage. Everything that you see, government, politics, it's all staged. Everything is staged. The courts are staged. It's all staged. Everything's a stage, right? And the devil really is in the details because guess what? No one reads the details anymore. No one reads those 200-page contracts, right? Everyone just assumes, right? They just give away their consent. There's no informed consent. People have no idea what privacy is anymore, right? They're just giving away everything, not realizing it's like, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
Any idea what you're doing? It's like, I'm very much, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm very much against AI, especially like we know that there's so much like stuff going on with copy AI now and all this sort of stuff. And I will not stay silent. If you're going to talk about AI, and I've done my best on like my news feed to sort of ignore the people with AI, because if I'm going to see it in your feed, I'm going to say something. I'm going to say it. I'm completely against it. I'm so against it because people just don't understand that you are literally feeding your demise. You are feeding your enemy. You think it's not your enemy right now. You think it's your friend. It's not your friend. Give it a couple of years, my friend. It will dominate you and you will be nothing. So I don't know your take on that, but I'm against it.
Well, I vacillate back and forth between a Terminator scenario.
Yeah.
And one that is not quite as grim. So right now, my stance on it is that you better learn to understand it and to live with it because it ain't going away.
No.
I also think that it's very important that we prevent ourselves from being so reliant on it like we did with social media and smartphones. Our whole society has changed as a result of convenience.
The con, remember, it's the con and convenience.
That's
the
beautiful.
con.
I love that. Yeah. Con and convenience.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're already too freaking lazy.
Of course.
You know,
But
this is a great example. So my wife, perfect person, she's hard to live up to. I obviously did a lot of work to be able to generate a great spouse like that because 20 years ago I wouldn't have had it. But anyway, that's funny trail. I got to this point where I was using GPS for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're coming back from someplace in Scottsdale, and I'm out here in Arizona, and I'm like, home. I tell my phone, home. And she's like, why are you using your GPS to take us home? And literally, I've lived in Arizona mostly since about 1982. I've watched them build this city. I know my way around here like I know the way around my house, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why in the F am I doing that?
Mm-hmm.
It's habit. You know, I've got now become dumb. And she's like, use your brain.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, sweetheart, you are absolutely right. My point is this: we've already gotten too lazy. We rely on devices and everything to make our lives easier. And look what that's birthed, right? This epidemic of entitlement.
100%. But the same will happen with AI. That's why it's like, it's not going to stop. Like, the beast is already there. The conditioning is already there. So, and that's my whole thing is like the 1 degree of separation. I feel like the minute you have 1 degree of separation from something, right? It's going to be harder for you to be able to do it. Right? It's the same way with these like ready prep meals. It's like, so wait a minute, let me get this straight. You get a box full of stuff in order to make a meal. So basically what you would normally do is you go to the grocery store and buy all your stuff, but now you get into a bot. Like, it's weird. It's that like, it's that 1 degree of separation. Like once they start taking that one thing away from you, you start becoming way too reliant on that tool,
Right.
you know? And it's one of those things that I try to like teach my niece too, you know, cause she's all about like, she loves making rice and she has to have a rice maker. If she doesn't have a rice maker, she just can't make it. And I was like, listen, you can't let tools dominate ever. I said, tools are there to help you, right? But if you're lost without it, you got a problem, right? You have to learn how to do stuff. And I do think that especially when it comes to copywriting, like, that copywriting is a creative thing. You have to practice it, right?
Right.
Like even me, like I haven't written in a while and I'm like, I'm a little rusty, right? So I'm like, I gotta practice, right? Like anything else, you have to practice that. So when you give them this convenience of, okay, just write copy for me or write a letter to my mother, whatever it is. I mean, people are going to do that because people are lazy. We are conditioning a generation of laziness. I mean, every generation, they get lazier and lazier. I look at my mom, how resourceful she is versus how I am sometimes. I'm like, man, I was like, I don't know how my mom did it for like, for years, sort of taking care of my father. When I had to take care of my boyfriend at the time, 2 months, I was like, I was like, I couldn't do it. I was breaking down.
Yeah.
But I was like, she did it for 2 years. I'm like, that's the resilience that generation had. They were used to doing hard stuff. They didn't complain if they had to do that. No, they did it. Now you ask someone to like meet you, but I was like, oh, it's 30 minutes away. Oh, I don't like traveling. I'm going to just stay home. It's like, really? You don't want to travel for 30 minutes? Like,
yeah. My wife is a great one for that, for like calling me on stuff like that. And it's like, even now, I'd like to think I'm self-aware.
Yeah.
But I still have so much room for growth. My kids, for example, like I have 4 stepkids, 2 that I raised with my first wife. I don't even talk to her anymore, but we're all very close. 2 of my own sons and then 2 stepdaughters. My boys moved out to Tempe, which is about a half an hour away. All right. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where Don was like, you going to go visit Michael this weekend? It's like, man, I got so much on the plate. I don't know. It's 30 minutes away. And she just looked at me like I was an idiot. And I realized I was like, yeah, what am I thinking? like I have a limited amount of time with these boys, you know, and I'm caught up in how much time it's going to take me to get there.
Exactly.
Like I piss away 30 minutes. How many times a week, right? To do
Exactly.
nothing, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's definitely something I have to be intentional about to, am I being lazy here? Am I focused on the wrong thing? And, learning to just say yes
Mm-hmm.
to things has been a huge shift in my life. It's been important.
Yeah.
Like you want to get, yes, let's do it. I
Yeah.
mean, of course, within reason, right? But,
For sure.
if someone's like, hey, you want to go do some cocaine? No, thank you very
No.
much. But, if I'm going to drive an hour to go see somebody I love, or even if it's to pick up a piece of furniture that
Yeah.
my wife has found on Facebook Marketplace or something else,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um, is there some piece of advice that looking back you would give 14-year-old Gabriella?
Oh, piece of advice. Oh, yes, I would say. Well, this is just based on my experience. Um,
Or even a
my
truth?
father was a my father was a craftsman, amazing craftsman. I mean, he built this house, he built everything, everything. And one of my biggest regrets is just never learning from his craft. Right? Not to say that I was going to become a craftsman, but just learning from him in terms of just how to basically do the basic stuff, right? How to build a house, how to do something, right? That is my biggest regret. This is why if I could go back to my 16-year-old self, I'd say, you know what, Gab, go into woodworking, go into whatever it is, just learn to do something with your hands. Right? Whatever it is, if your father's a plumber, if he's a roofer, even now when we were getting our roof done at our old house, and this father was teaching his kids, and I was like telling the kids, I was like, listen, I know it probably doesn't seems annoying now that you got to work with your father and roofing and shit, and people are working on their computers and making so much more money, but I'm telling you, I'm like, this is a lost art. I'm like, this is a lost art. I'm like, learn from your father, even if you don't decide to do this. It's fine. But I'm telling you right now, there's going to come a time in your life, in 20 years from now, when you're wanting to build your own home, right? That this is going to come in handy and you're going to need this and you're going to be so appreciative that you learned this. So I definitely think that I really do advocate anyone learning, anyone, especially men, young guys, go learn a trade. Seriously, you got to learn it. I think, like I said, they deceived people into believing that go into these high tech jobs because, they're, get paid well. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you, it's the plumbers, it's the contractors nowadays that are making the six figures, not the guys that have spent 10 years in school because you get out and you're only making whatever it is, 60, 70 grand. You're not making that money you thought you're going to make. But these contractors now, it's insane. It's crazy. It's just crazy how much money they're making. And at the same time, too, there's so much to be said when you make something with your hands. There is nothing compares to when you are able to see your work and do something with it. There's nothing that compares to it. So that's what I would basically say is, learn a craft, learn a craft with your hands if you can. Even if it's not something you're going to do, right? It's not going to be your career. That's fine. As long as you have it in your wheelhouse, you're able to do it. Because at one time, you're going to appreciate that you have it. You are definitely going to appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. And what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, I want to be remembered for that. I think most people remember me mostly for my just my tenacity in terms of I've always been someone who goes for the underdog, and I don't stop. Right, I'm an advocate for that because I don't know, maybe it's the fact that I was the youngest of four. Just you always have to fight for something when you're the youngest.
Yeah.
So I think I'll definitely be remembered for that tenacious aspect of. She gets her when I get my claws into something, I'm not going to stop until I am satisfied with the result that I want. And again, that can either be embraced depending on who you are, or you can hate that depending on who you are. Right. So, but I think it'll definitely be, that ability to, the fact that I am tenacious at that part in that respect.
That's great. Um, I should have asked you this earlier, but I'm going to ask you now. What is one thing that really just you're so passionate about, that lights you up, that just brings you joy or energy, or just, man, I get so jazzed about this thing? What is that
Oh,
for you?
there's definitely a few things for sure. Like most women, dances love to dance. I mean, if there's any music going on, I mean, my butt shaking, everything. I mean, I love it. You just get lost in it, right? Doesn't matter who's around. The minute music comes on, is I don't care. I'm going to dance. Don't care. Love that, right?
That's great.
So I definitely think dancing is for sure on the top of that list. There's definitely other things as well. Definitely for me, I've definitely gotten more and more into gardening past couple of years, and really love that aspect of it. I can stay there all day long, and tend to my flowers and tend to my vegetables and all that. So that is definitely something where, yes, I'm gearing more and more towards just kind of focusing on that, because that's where I love to stay most of my days.
Great. The little garden in the backyard too. Love that.
Yeah.
The last question I want to ask you is really, is there a question that you wish I would have asked you that I didn't?
Good question. Probably not. No, you've been pretty thorough. You've been pretty good. So I can't say, I can think of anything right now. I think we covered quite a bit.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
So
definitely covered quite a bit.
then, like, what would you like listeners to do when they watch this or hear this? I mean, how do they get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your resources, or if they want your expertise when it comes to their email marketing and their e-commerce? Like, how does somebody contact you? What do you want them to do?
I would say the best way is to do it is via email. I would say go to my sites, but in all honesty, I haven't updated stuff on that. Like, again, I haven't really been focused on that too much in the last year and a half, so I kind of put that aside. So the best thing is just go to Gabby@acemaverickmedia.com. That's the best way to reach me, is just always email if there's something. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Gabriella, I love all of those versions. It's been absolutely amazing talking with you. I'm so grateful that you spent this time with me, and I would love to maybe come back and have one of these like really in-depth discussions about controversial shit, because I think we could have a fun conversation about that. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thank you for tuning in to Hero Up. I hope today's episode challenged you to step up as a hero in your field and provided you with valuable insights to express your unique voice and message. If you found this episode helpful and motivating, please leave a review and share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes and amazing guests. Until next time, find your voice, share your message, live your mission.